it was a little difficult trying to get volunteers. And there was one woman who was the head of the county jail. And everybody's like, Barbara, you need to go up there and do this. Barbara, come on. And Barbara's like, I'm not doing this. This is bullshit. I'm not going to this. Is ridiculous. And, I was a little lacking in trying to get some volunteers, so I was willing to take anybody that came up on stage. So finally, this woman, she's like, fine, I'll go up and do this. This is bullshit. It's not going to work. And she comes up and she sits down on, in the chair. And then an hour later, she opens up her eyes and has no idea what just transpired over the last hour. And all the other cops are coming up to me and they're going like, oh my God, now we know this is real because we know her. We work with her all the time. There was no way that she was faking that. And that was a part of her that we've never, ever seen before in her life.
Las distracciones y narrativas reinan este mundo tecnológico. Todos tienen una opinión de lo que es la verdad y lo que es mentira. ¿Quién controla el mundo? Los aliens son real. Vivimos en un Matrix. Estas preguntas serán debatidas con José y Daniel G, explorando y descubriendo las verdades de nuestro mundo, nuestras creencias y nuestro reality. Welcome to Cultura Truth Project. Dímelo, mi gente. Welcome back. It's another one. Otro episodio. Es Cultura Truth Project. We're back. Jose G, Daniel G, and we got a special guest. John Moyer. Welcome to the show, broski. How you doing today?
I am good. El hipnotizador en la casa.
¿Qué es la que hay? Oh my God, ahí está empezando el gringuito con el español. Vámonos, mi gente.
I love it. I love it.
Poco.
Welcome to the show. How are you, Danny?
Man, Danny's good. I thought you were asking me, but I'm good too.
I'm fantastic. Before the show, we did the supporters club, and I'm excited that me and you look like 80s Miami drug dealers right now. It's my favorite part of the podcast right now.
I'm missing the thick ass gold chains and the Cuban link.
We need a couple of Cuban links and gold ropes around our necks with a Jesus piece or two. Definitely, but hey, we're on a budget here. It's fine.
Well, guys, thank you for joining us today. Remember, follow us on all of our socials. Síguenos en todas las redes sociales, YouTube, Rumbo, Cultura Truth Project, at Gonzalez Media TV on Instagram and on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. And join the Supporters Club. Show your support. Link in the description. $3 a month. Audio only. All the stuff you can't get on YouTube. You can't get on Rumble. You can't get anywhere else but on Spreaker at the Supporters only. So the link is in the description. So make sure you do that. John, how you doing? Thanks for being on the show, man. Before we get started, man, go ahead and plug your stuff in.
You can always find me at, I'm primarily, my biggest platform is YouTube. It's JohnMoyerHypnosis. And the website is MoyerMindset.com, which talks about basically what my wife and I do together relative to our kind of combined hypnosis skills and abilities. I like to put together all the creative stuff, the digital media, and my wife does all the one-on-one hypnosis sessions. That's her right there. There you go. You pulled her up.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And where can and I know that we already plugged that stuff, but how did you get all started with hypnosis? And Danny knows you from previously from being a comedian, so you got a comedic background, entertainment background. How did this whole journey start into the world of hypnotism, reprogramming the subconscious mind, meditation, all that stuff? How did this journey start for you, John?
It started in a really strange way. It all kind of happened by happenstance. I was a professional stand-up comedian for over 20 years. And, in the early 2000s, the dynamic of stand-up kind of changed relative to the clubs and stuff that were out there. And I was getting a little tired of it. And the funny thing is I mean, first of all, I was always interested in the mind. I was always fascinated by, that kind of stuff. And I was hired to I was doing an event as a stand-up comic, and there was a series of other stuff all going on throughout the day for this event. I did my show, and the venue was probably maybe half full, maybe 60% full. And what I didn't know is that after me, they had a stage hypnotist, and then the stage hypnotist comes up after my show, and it's like standing room only. And the audience was just so engaged and fascinated, and people were excited to, get on the stage and be part of the show. And then, of course, he's selling all kinds of merchandise after the show that are people throwing money hand over fist to buy all his CDs and stuff like that. And I was like, that looks fun. I could do that. I already know how to be on stage. Just have to figure out how to hypnotize people. So I went and trained. I learned in stage hypnosis. And I was able to go back to all the people that I worked with in comedy, all the bookers, the managers, clubs, entertainment event bookers, that sort of thing. And I said, hey, I've got a whole new show. And I started performing a stage hypnosis show. And it went from 0 to 60 really quickly. And I was able to go from doing, one night cowboy bar hell gigs, in Montana, being put up at a Motel 6 for the night, to being able to, I was performed around the world for Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. And from all of that, though, hypnotists always had merchandise that they were selling after the show, CDs of stop smoking and weight loss and falling asleep. And the thing is CDs became obsolete. People stopped having, they didn't have CD players anymore to listen to this stuff. So all of these hypnotists and, like the Facebook groups and the things that I belong to, they're all debating, well, what are we going to do now? How are we going to sell our product now? And a lot of them was like, well, we're just going to make digital files. We'll put them on a thumb drive, and we can sell thumb drives with MP3s. And I never really liked, hawking my wares after the show. It just kind of seemed kind of weird. You're standing at the back of the room, come buy my stuff. And so I just thought, what I would do is if I'm going to create MP3 files anyway, I'm just going to put them on my website and then tell people that if they want them, they can go and buy them there. I realize it's also kind of an impulse buy when somebody's at the show, that they're going to go and buy this stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I started putting some of my stuff on YouTube, thinking that, hey, maybe somebody would hear my stuff on YouTube. They go to my website and they buy it. It never even occurred to me that YouTube would be a platform that people would go to actually listen to hypnosis programs. And I wasn't even paying attention. I just put some stuff on YouTube, and I go back 6 months later, and all of a sudden I've got like these videos that had blown up on YouTube. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. And I think I'm just going to focus on doing this. And that's what I started doing, is I just created these hypnosis and meditation programs to go on YouTube. But now the thing about YouTube is they like to dial in your niche and go down and get it as kind of a narrow niche as you can. And apparently people took to my stuff that were interested in hypnosis and meditation to fall asleep, but then they wanted something to play for 8 hours while they were asleep for the 8 hours. So I started making these 8-hour sleep hypnosis and sleep meditation videos. And I was really fortunate because, we had the lockdown happen. And of course, nobody was performing. There were no shows. And I was really fortunate that I was able to have what I was doing, digitally and putting out there on YouTube. And things obviously took off even more during the lockdown because people were stressed and they were home and they didn't have anything else to do. So they thought they'd just hypnotize themselves to feel better. And that's kind of how it all happened. I wound up retiring from stand-up and then just going and doing the stage show and all the digital content full time.
So, John, I guess before we get into the actual show, explain what you do exactly as a hypnotist, because for a guy like me that I've seen and worked with a couple of hypnotists, I have no idea what I'm looking at. like I've opened up for a few of these, traveling hypnosis guys around Texas, and it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, the show sells out and some guys bark on stage or whatnot. And then at the end of the day, I'm just like, well, they're fucking stupid. I'm just going to go over here. And I'm not trying to call the audience member stupid, but like it just, as a stand-up, as you were at one point, as a stand-up as you were at one point, we're like, okay, well, we're doing the real work as stand-ups over
That's
here.
ex-
But
yeah.
obviously you have so much respect in the world of stand-up that you said, hey, this is way cooler.
Well, and that's the thing, because I was like that, you as a stand-up, we all looked at the the hypnotist that would come in, and we're like, oh my gosh, it's gimmicky and it's hacky, and it's all the stand-ups hated the hypnotist, especially because of the fact you'd show up to the club to do your show and maybe it's like half full or whatever, and then the manager would go, yeah, we had the hypnotist here last week and we sold out every show and we had to add 2 more. And that would always piss me off every time. And then I just got to the point where I'm like, well, if you can't beat them, join them. And I was glad that I did, because it took things to another level. But what happened? So basically, how does hypnosis work? Is that kind of what you want to know there?
Yeah.
The thing is, well, first of all, it's a natural part of our brains. So we experience hypnosis all the time. It's like, you're driving down the road, it's like you're lost in thought, and then all of a sudden you just like pull up in the driveway and you're home. That's a form of hypnosis. Or like you're reading a book, you get to the bottom of the page, you have no idea what you read, that's hypnosis. If you're out on a date with somebody and you spend the entire time thinking about somebody else, that's actually a bad marriage. That's not hypnosis. But
Good.
he's still stand-up, guys. He's still a stand-up. He needs to throw it in there. It's fine. Let's
throw it
do
in
it.
there.
That's called a punchline. For those comics who don't know how to write a joke, that's how you write a joke 101. Okay, there we go.
I mean, once a comic, you're always a comic. You're never going to lose that. In your performance and your presentation, you're always going to keep that.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, because when you go up in front of the audience for, the first 5 minutes or so, and you're doing what's called the pre-talk, where you're basically kind of warming up the audience and encouraging them to come up on stage, I'm able to weave in a lot of, stand-up and stuff of, with what I do to obviously make the audience feel more comfortable and have a good time and come up on stage. But what happens is, there's 2 parts of, the mind. There's the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And we've kind of got this built-in firewall in our brains, and it's called the critical faculty. And I liken it to the bouncer with a red velvet rope outside of a nightclub who determines who gets in and who doesn't get in. So what you're doing with hypnosis is you're basically distracting that bouncer with a red velvet rope in front of the nightclub or inside our heads, distracting him, and then you're putting in suggestions to the subconscious mind. So you're kind of lowering that firewall for a temporary period of time, and you're putting these suggestions in, and it's the subconscious mind that really operates us at 90% of the time throughout the day. That's where all our programming is. And the thing about hypnosis is that the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's not when you're under hypnosis. It's like when you have a dream. It seems, it may be bizarre and strange, but while you're having the dream, it seems very real and you accept it as real. So that's what's going on under hypnosis. When you're in that state and the brain is telling you this experience is real, you're just going to act as if it is real, because you believe that that's the actual experience. And that's kind of what's happening. And the actual techniques of hypnosis, there's various things that you do to distract the bouncer with a red velvet rope. But in a nutshell, that's kind of what's happening.
That's absolutely amazing that you said that, because I've been diving in deep into reprogramming subconscious mind, hypnotherapy, meditation for the last 3 years. And I've come across, doctors like Dr. Joe Dispenza. I follow his work.
Yeah.
Great stuff. And one of the things that he explained, just like you explained, that the brain can't tell the difference if it's the past or the future. And when you're having that thought, it's all about the feeling, right? So
yeah,
once you can connect with the feeling, then you can start reprogramming those subconscious little programs that you've been handed down as a child. And that's something, it takes at least for me, it's taken a long time to really kind of reprogram my mind to think in other ways, because we're talking about 40 years of programming that, that's in there, right? So
yeah.
when you're looking at people, especially like meditation or manifesting, that's been like a really popular word over the last 4 years. I'm manifesting this, I'm manifesting that. I actually kind of take that of like you're actually bringing your subconscious, your unconscious into reality. What's your take on that?
I always say when it comes to hypnosis, there's two kinds of people. There's the Newtonian physics people who believe that you have to physically interact with the reality around you to be able to have any effect or, make any change or do anything. And then there's the quantum physics law of attraction people who come from the space that everything is energy. So we're resonating an energy that's going out into the ethereal universe and is then attracting a similar energy to them. So if you're using hypnosis for that, it's going to work for you either way, because the if you're going to change, you're going to change your mindset. So now all of a sudden you're going to act differently. And if you're acting differently and thinking differently and feeling differently, then you're going to interact with reality differently. If you come from the law of attraction, quantum physics perspective, that everything is energy, then what happens is the conscious mind processes about, I think it's like 7 to 10 bits of information per second. And the subconscious mind processes something like 20 million bits of information per second if you're looking at it in computer terms. So you've got a lot more happening in the subconscious mind that's going on that we don't realize. But if you've got 20 million bits of information being processed per second of the subconscious mind, well, then that's generating, an energetic state. It's controlling how we feel and how we think. And so being in those states, or rewiring our minds. So we're not thinking the way we used to think or feeling the way we used to think, but we're coming into an entirely new energy resonance. Then that energy is going out into the quantum field and then therefore calling forth those circumstances that are going to sustain us in that energy.
It's that same from Dr. Joe Dispenza, change your personality and you'll change your personal reality.
Yeah, exactly. That's, and that's what's interesting to me, because a lot of the programs that I put out on YouTube all kind of come from that perspective. I don't necessarily do stuff for like stopping smoking and weight loss and those typical things. My subscriber base is interested in stuff about, energy and manifesting and how can we make these changes within us and to be able to create a different effect outside of us.
Now, let me ask you this, right? Because this kind of resembles a lot of what, and we talk about this a lot on the podcast. It's like what some religious cultures call like prayer and meditation and stuff like that. And I do believe, and I've experienced in my personal anecdotal experiences, when going into deep prayer, you do experience certain things, right? Like whatever that is, for the individual to express. But like, how would you, when walking somebody through a hypnosis, how do you know if they're actually complying and like into that and they're actually, going into it, or if they're just like being resistant to it and not falling into it? Because I felt, when working with hypnosis at a live setting, it's like I feel very resistant to it because of the skepticism. But like, if you put me in a church and you asked me to pray for 3 hours, I'd probably be okay and probably fall into tongues or whatever because of the environment. And I'm assuming it's the same placebo effect in some way. Just I guess it's the perception of how you put it.
Well, the thing is there's certain things that to look for somebody that's experiencing hypnosis. And now when I bring people up on stage, I've got a very narrow window of time to be able to do that. And I'm working with a lot of people. So it's kind of has to be kind of a one size fits all, the proverbial throw mud up against the wall and see how much sticks. But there are specific physical characteristics when somebody experiences hypnosis that you're looking for and that you're able to tell. And then when it comes to, especially in a stage show, people act a very specific way when they're experiencing hypnosis versus pretending or that they're doing something. So people will act one way, then you go, that they're hypnotized versus somebody that, that might be playing along. And It's not a one size fits all for everybody because some people go under deeper, some people go under faster, and people do have very different responses and they have different levels and depths of which, they're going under when it comes to hypnosis. And obviously, when somebody comes up on stage, you want them to be a willing participant. So I do what I can to encourage people to come up on stage who truly want to experience this and are open-minded about it, not somebody that's going to come up and go, "Oh, I'm here to prove that you can't hypnotize me." So, but then the thing is that people are so different in that way too, because I'll have people that'll go out in the audience, people that didn't want to come up on stage, and then they wind up becoming hypnotized in the audience. And it's a very interesting thing when you see that happen, because somebody's like, I wasn't even looking to go up there, and all of a sudden, boom, it just happened to me. And happened to me a few years ago. I was doing an event in just outside of Salt Lake City. I was up in Park City, Utah, for the sheriff's department up there, and it was for their annual holiday event. And it was kind of an interesting way, because the way that was all set up, and clearly these were a bunch of cops that just probably would have preferred to hang out and drink and not necessarily have a hypnosis show. And it was a little difficult trying to get volunteers. And there was one woman who was the head of the county jail. And everybody's like, "Barbara, you need to go up there and do this. Barbara, come on." And Barbara's like, "I'm not doing this. This is bullshit. I'm not going to, this is ridiculous." And, I was a little lacking in trying to get some volunteers. So I was willing to take anybody that came up on stage. So finally, this woman, she's like, "Fine, I'll go up and do this. This is bullshit. It's not going to work." And she comes up and she sits down on, in the chair. And then an hour later, she opens up her eyes and has no idea what just transpired over the last hour. And all the other cops are coming up to me and they're going like, "Oh my God, now we know this is real," because we know her. We work with her all the time. There was no way that she was faking that. And that was a part of her that we've never, ever seen before in her life. And they're all playing back the videos that they recorded on their phones and stuff. And this woman just was like, "What the hell just happened?" She didn't remember any of it. And then they were showing the videos and she couldn't believe there she was doing this stuff on stage. So that is kind of a rare exception to the rule, that normally I wouldn't want somebody to come up on stage that didn't want to be there. But it's, it's all very different for different people.
There's a lot to what you both just kind of said, because the environment, I think, is very important. Because I remember about I want to say maybe just under 20 years ago, at my first attempt to quit smoking, I went to this group event that I had found online, and it was a hypnosis thing, and there was like over 100 people there, and they were trying to do like the mass hypnosis thing. And for some reason, I wanted to, but I couldn't allow myself to be hypnotized. But then I do it on my own terms. I find a YouTube video and I just listen to it every night, in my home, and with, where I can control the environment. And then I quit smoking. So
Yeah.
I think the environment has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, it really does, because somebody may not necessarily feel comfortable going up on stage, for a stage show in front of everybody, or just being there with other people around them. And then they get in their head and they're distracted, and it can be a challenge for them to do that. And there was a time I never thought I could be, hypnotized. And I began doing meditation and self-hypnosis myself at home. And then it's like a muscle, you're not going to go to the gym and just bench lift, this huge amount of weights the first time you go there, but you build it up. And as you build it up, then you're able to do more. So it's like a case for me is like when I sit down to meditate, I get in that position and I'm in the lotus position on my pillow, my body, my brain go, "Okay, this is what this means." And then boom, I go right from the beta brainwave state down into the alpha and the theta brainwave state. So you can condition yourself to do that. And people will come up to me after a show sometimes and look if I may have dismissed them up front, and they'll go, "Why didn't it work for me?" And I go, "I have no idea, but it could be any number of things. But if it's something that you want to do, you can develop that ability." And it is a lot easier for somebody to just sit at home. There's no pressure. Nobody's around. Nobody's watching them. They're not in front of an actual hypnotist, and they can just do it on their own terms, on their own way. And they can be very receptive to that.
Now, do you think And because you've done both comedy and hypnosis, do you think that the similarity allowed you to transition? Because guys like Joe Rogan says when a comedian is killing, it's like he's performing mass hypnosis.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you believe that that's a skill that was easily transferable?
Well, earlier on, a friend of mine had shared this with me. He said, you can be a really great hypnotist and be a really lousy stage hypnotist. And there's people that are great showmen, great stage hypnotists that aren't necessarily great hypnotists. So it's being able to find that, that balance, because I've seen guys that are really good hypnotists get up and the show sucks and the show is boring. And it's, even though people are hypnotized, it's, not that interesting. So for me, having the ability and to be able to be funny on stage, and one of the things that really helped me, something that I developed early on when I was doing stand up, just starting out as an MC, was crowd work and being able to think on my feet and be able to interact with a crowd. And of course, there's a lot of comedians that get up there and they do crowd work, and the other comedians are like, he has no act, he can't write.
It's a skill. It's a
It
skill.
is a skill.
It's a skill.
And one of the things that I've always told comedians is like, you should be able to go and have your 45 minutes to an hour show where you never talk to the audience. And you should be able to go up and do 45 minutes to an hour where you just talk to the audience and maybe don't necessarily do any of your material, but you're still able to kill in that way. So for me, the ability to be able to think on my feet and, almost it's like an improv skill, really helps to be able to, as you're interacting with people on stage and responding to the people on stage, because sometimes, somebody might say something, while they're hypnotized, and maybe whatever they say isn't that funny, but I'm able to respond in such a way that obviously gets a big laugh from the audience. So it really is like you've got all these spinning plates in the air where you've got to hypnotize people and make sure that what the hypnotized people are doing is actually interesting to the audience. And at the same time, be able to kind of weave yourself through all of that so you can carry the show along. Of course, the interesting thing about, you do a hypnosis show, people are fascinated by the element of hypnosis, and they're fascinated seeing their friends and their family or whoever is up on stage. And, on a scale of 1 to 10, I know what, a 10 show is like. And, I know what a 2 or 3 show is like. And, there's times I've gotten done with a show and I'm like, oh my God, that was just the one thing that I say about hypnotists, stage hypnotists, is the good mark of a stage hypnotist sometimes is his or her ability. How far can they keep the show from not going off the rails? The show is going to go off the rails, but how close at least can you get it to kind of stay in the vicinity of the rails? And times I think a show sucks, and then people come up and like, oh my God, that was the most amazing thing, the most interesting thing, the funniest thing I've ever seen, which helps a little bit, because you know what it's like. You get up on stage and you bomb and nobody laughs. Nobody's going to come up and go, oh my God, that was the most amazing thing.
No. Or the worst part is when they get that one white lady goes, good try.
Yeah.
That hurts the most. Yeah. That hurts the most. Just like, good try. You just tried.
I always used to hate it hanging out at the club, after a show when I was opening, and somebody would come out and they'd see the headliner, and like, oh, that was really funny. That was a great show. And then they realize you're standing over there and they're like, hey, you were good too.
You're right.
It's okay. You tried.
Yeah.
Keep practicing. Keep writing.
Now, when we're talking, hypnosis, it's the power of suggestion, so, either reprogramming the subconscious mind. I could view it as a tool. It's a tool, or skill, right? And a skill or a tool can be used for right or wrong, good or bad. And we've seen in history how governments, specifically in the United States, CIA, they have used some form of hypnotism, either with propaganda, TV, movies. Like, for example, Edward Bernays. The guy is known for being the father of propaganda. Edward Bernays, this guy, I don't know if you guys know who Edward Bernays is, but this guy is single-handedly known for a
The
couple of
guy
things.
who inspired Joseph Goebbels.
Well, he's the guy that inspired what we call the torches of freedom, which were cigarettes. These were women back in 1920s that were walking around with cigarettes, and that was frowned upon back then. But it was planted. He planted that there, and then because of that, those 5 women that were smoking cigarettes, it threw out a whole wave of other women wanting to smoke cigarettes, right? And then some other stuff with the Guatemalan government, but another thing that he's very well known for, he made this study back in the 40s and 50s with the doctors at the American Physicians Association, and they put out a study that eggs and bacon is the American preferred breakfast, and because of that report, now the majority of people in America eat eggs and bacon. So when we look at guys like Edward Bernays using propaganda to change and influence the minds of millions of people, that has to be some type of a mass hypnosis at a scale that we can't fathom. What do you think of that?
Well, I'll kind of tell you my take on the modern day version of that. When you're looking at your phone screen, that is actually a form of hypnosis, because I know what it's like trying to talk to my kids sometimes when they're staring at the phone screen. They're completely oblivious that I'm there. It's like when you're watching a movie or a TV show and you're like really into that, and you're oblivious to, your wife saying, "Hey, you need to take out the trash, or you need to come do me because, it's been however long." So, if they're looking at their phone screen, and we get a hit of dopamine when we get a notification. So we have become conditioned and literally hypnotized by looking at our phones. So now you're staring at your phone screen. You're kind of in a hypnotic state. It's a highly suggestible state. So when you're scrolling through your phone, and then you've got the algorithms of whatever social media platform that you're on, that's going to continue to feed you the stuff that they know that you're interacting with. So, if you hate one politician and you're constantly arguing with somebody on Facebook or wherever it is, or X, about, this political idea, this political person, well, what's happening is that you're in that hypnotic state, and that is continually being reinforced. So it's like all you have to do is put out, information and articles and, what people are tweeting about and what people are posting about that either pisses you off or reinforces the things that you already believe. And that, to me, is the modern day, version of mass hypnosis, which is happening, not even, you don't have to be in front of a mass of people. It's just happening one by one by one and affecting everybody that way.
It's like a Black Mirror episode, literally, because we're staring into a black mirror, and we see the reality change in front of our eyes, and it's interesting because, and not to, we're gonna, I don't know what word we could use on YouTube for this, but let's call it, the plague. Let's call it the plague, right? That we experienced the last couple of years. It wasn't just the phones that we were staring at and consuming it, but it was like controlled. Hey, this is what it is. Hey, this is what it is. And I want to be very sensitive in what language I use, because I really don't want this video to be taken down. They would say certain keywords, for the plague, and you're not only being hypnotized because you're already staring at your phone, but now it's like key phrases, 6 feet apart, all of a sudden, you're not even staring at your phone, and then you're at a grocery store 6 feet apart, and you don't even think about it. You just go, "Oh my God, I just gotta move away."
Yeah.
It's interesting how they were able to do that with the masses. And interesting fact about Edward Bernays, he's the guy who literally inspired Joseph Goebbels, Jose.
Yeah, man. And the more I looked into Edward Bernays, like the stuff that this guy did, like this guy's single-handedly responsible for overthrowing the government of Guatemala back during the 50s, which is insane. So, and it's all because little propaganda, mind control, moving the masses type of situation. But there's something to it, and especially what you just said with the phone. Absolutely. It's 1,000 times more magnified than what it was decades ago,
Yeah.
because we're constantly on here. If you take away a phone from a teenager, their life is over. They're like, "Oh my God, what am I gonna do?" You know? So uh,
Yeah.
but I also think that it's incredible, because that also kind of gets me down to the rabbit hole. Then, okay, then if the CIA and people in power were using this type of mass hypnosis, and now we're having at the fingertips of our hands, I could only imagine where we're going to be at in 20 years from now.
Well, you probably won't even need hypnosis then. Everybody stuff will just get beamed into everybody's head, right? I mean, that's what they're
They're
talking
already
about.
being beamed into your
Yeah.
head.
Yeah. And, and that's why it's so important is we realize, take control of our own minds, take control of our own emotional states. And that's really what it comes down to, is because, it's one of the things that, if you want to get out into the, to that quantum physics,
Let's do it. Let's get quantum up in here.
there's all kinds of
I
things.
get quantum all the time, bro. Let's do it.
It's like there's no out there, there's only, in here. So the thing is, we're conditioning a large portion of the population to believe that they, have no control over their emotional states. Things happen, they're upset and they freak out about it. And that's just the way that the way that it is. When we come from a space of going, okay, we're going to respond to something, not react to something, or we're able to condition our minds so we're not flying off the handle in, at road rage or, some Karen or whatever the case may be. If you can manage your emotional states effectively, then you're going to interact with the world around you much more effectively. But that's part of the problem is that we've told a lot of people that, what, the way that you feel is, it becomes hyper realistic to them because it's just this amplified experience of anger or rage or upset or fear or whatever it may be. And to them, and when you're feeling something that's very, very real to you, whether it's right or whether it's wrong, good or bad or whatever, that's very real to you. But then there's people that think I'm feeling this way and you should feel this way too, or you're the one that's making me feel this way. And that's the big thing. That's one of the key themes of a lot of the programs that I do, that I put out there, is that we don't need anybody else to make, to sustain us in an emotional state. So you hear somebody go, if you do this, I can feel better. If you don't do this, I can feel better. Or you did this and that really made me mad. Or so the fact of the matter is we don't need anybody to be different for us to be at peace and for us to be happy. Manage those emotional states in here, and then everything out here changes. Even if you're coming from the Newtonian physics perspective, if something happens and then you're able to be present and realize that and understand how you're feeling and navigate your emotions, then you're going to interact with somebody in a very, very different way. So that's part of the key is, learning to be able to take control of our own mind and, and our own emotional states.
Now, a big factor that I've also kind of been discovering in this journey of diving into this world is, and I don't know if this is related to it, but the pineal gland. I think the
Yeah.
pineal gland is something very important that a lot of people don't know about. But the pineal gland is literally a gland inside your brain that looks like a pine, and it's supposed to be kind of like a rate or like an antenna. It sends
Yeah.
out signals, right? And a lot of people that practice meditation, either be Buddhist or Hindu or just regular meditation, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about decalcifying the pineal gland, right? And do you think that hypnosis can help with that process of decalcifying the pineal gland, or it has nothing to do with it, in your opinion?
Well, an interesting thing about the pineal gland is it's got piezoelectric properties. There's little crystals inside the pineal gland that act like the crystals that would be inside, of a radio, sending and receiving frequencies, that was not something they didn't realize until, I don't know, I think it's been within the last 20 years or something like that. I could be wrong about that, but that they're like, oh my God, inside of our brains, we have these crystals in our pineal gland that actually act like radio transmitters and receivers, which is kind of a really interesting thing. Again, it goes back to kind of that Newtonian or the quantum physics law of attraction philosophy that's like, well, you're putting out something and, you know, you're receiving something. It's the same way with, like, you know, when you see birds, and it's amazing. There's a flock of birds and they're all able to turn at the same time on a dime, the way that they're flying. It's because they've all got their own kind of built-in radar that's connecting to each other, that's allowing them to be able to do that. Well, we have those same things happening within our pineal gland. Now, and there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of discussion about the pineal gland and calcification, and you know, you'll hear people talk about, you know, fluoride calcifying the pineal gland, and it's like, well, why are they putting fluoride in the drinking water in communities? And of course, people will say, well, they, you know, the argument is it helps be able to protect your teeth, and it fortifies your teeth and strengthens your teeth. Well, is it about that, or is it because some powers that may, you know, that may be, are intentionally trying to calcify the pineal gland, so the pineal gland isn't going to be able to function for us? Now, whether, you know, relative to hypnosis decalcifying the pineal gland, that's a good question. I don't know that if it would physically, you know, do that. But then, of course, you know, one of the things that Joe Dispenza teaches, especially in his book, "You Are the Placebo," you know, if you're experiencing, you know, hypnosis and you're believing that your pineal gland is decalcifying, well, if your mind's going to accept that as real, are you actually going to have that actual physical change in your physiological state in your pineal gland? You know, that's a good question. But relative to kind of more of the, you know, the esoteric aspects of the pineal gland, as far as transmissions and receiving, you know, that is something that can certainly, one can experience during a hypnotic state or, you know, meditation. There's sister states of mind. What was really interesting when I started doing meditation early on, now one of my early experiences was that I was, you know, meditating, and at first I was in my inside in my bedroom, and it was a really weird thing because my eyes were closed, but I felt like there was a light, like somebody had a flashlight on the other side of the room that they turned the flashlight on, and I knew that that wasn't the case because I was in, you know, it was in my bedroom. Then it got even weirder because then, as the weather changed, I was meditating outside. My wife and I would go outside. We'd meditate in the backyard. So I'm in the backyard and it's night and it's dark outside. And all of a sudden it was like, again, through my eyes, with, you know, my eyelids, thinking that there was this light outside of me. And I thought, did somebody turn a porch light on somewhere? Was there some street light that went on somewhere? And I was like resisting the temptation to open my eyes because here I am in this meditation, but I'm aware that there is this light outside of me. I open my eyes and there's no, you know, there's no street lights on, there's no porch lights on, there's nothing like that. And my wife and I became friends with Dr. Robert Gilbert, and we had an he's got a great series on Gaia TV. He talks a lot about sacred geometry and in relationship to our bodies. And we had a chance to hang out with him a few months ago, and I brought that up to him, and I had this experience early on, and he told me he had the same thing happen. And he told me, he goes, that's the pineal gland. That is the activation of that happening, and it's that light outside of you that you're perceiving, but it's actually the activation of the you know, the pineal gland firing up.
Interesting. Now, I guess to get to the darker side of what some might say it's a type of hypnosis, but you know, I guess the biggest one is like the darkest of them all is MK Ultra mind control, right? I know that there were drugs involved in that program, but that has to be a form of hypnosis. I mean, do you think not necessarily the government, but do you think that with mind altering drugs, you can enhance the power of suggestion?
Yeah, if somebody's in, yeah, mind altering drugs can certainly, influence somebody to go one way or the other.
Do you think that was the case with, these guys in the 60s committing all those murders? Or do you think it's just one of those things where it's like, well, they're just crazy people who got a hold of some stuff and
I
some
mean, I
crazy leader?
haven't done a whole deep dive into the whole MK Ultra thing, but if you look at, if you go back to the time, what was it, the 70s, you look at somebody like Patty Hearst, where they talk about Stockholm syndrome. She was, kidnapped, and then eventually she wound up, kind of aligning with the beliefs of her kidnappers and kind of became, that way. So, the mind can be influenced in a myriad of ways. We look at hypnosis as something more that's kind of an instant experience, but, over a period of time, one can certainly be influenced in a variety of, of techniques. And, it goes too, you talk about, you know, what's influencing people, or what's going on. And, even it comes down to the nature of reality. And I think that there's more. You mentioned earlier about, prayer. And I think that there's a lot of things, if you look in standard Judeo-Christian philosophy, and it actually goes to any religious philosophy for that matter. But if you look in like, the Bible, where Jesus says, if you have faith, you can move mountains, with faith, you can do all of these things. Is that spiritual idea of faith, or is that rooted somehow in the idea of quantum physics, and that our energy can influence reality? And I think that early civilizations had a great understanding of the relationship between energy and physical matter. And over the years, a lot of that's been corrupted by, people that wanted to be able to exert control over other individuals. They wanted to be able to take knowledge away from people, and then just say, "Hey, I'm the one that's got all this knowledge, so you need to follow me, and you need to do what I need to do." And I think that a lot of people are now coming kind of back into that discovery of the relationship between the mind and physical matter and energy. And we're kind of going back to, we're starting to rediscover what, ancient civilizations understood. And I don't think that it's it's a woo woo, we talk about spiritual in the sense of what somebody might traditionally associate spiritual with religion. I think it all comes down to the idea of the true nature of reality in quantum physics.
Mm.
You said ancient civilizations, and my nipples immediately got hard because that's a topic I love talking about. But, kind of going back to the pineal gland, there's something with the pine cone shape, because when we're talking about ancient civilizations, I mean, there's a tablet or some type of carving with an ancient Sumerian deity named Tammuz, and in his hand, he has a pine cone.
Yeah.
There's right.
Yeah.
And then even in the Vatican, when you go to the Vatican, what's in the Vatican? At the Fontana della Pina, another pine cone.
Yeah.
So there's something that, whoever they may be, they know about the pineal gland, because the pineal gland is shaped like a pine cone. And it's amazing to me.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you guys brought we keep talking about the pineal gland, and Jose and I talk a lot about this. And I'm I guess I'm the residential religious expert on the podcast. I'm not an expert. I just know what the word says, and I believe in certain things. And when Jesus in the Bible talks about faith, he really talks a lot about the renewal of the mind. And he's like, in prayer, renew your mind. In prayer, renew your mind, which is funny because what is meditation? What is prayer at the end of the day? But like a renewal of the mind, of a convincing of yourself of, this is who I am. This is my reality. This is my personality. I choose to be this way. And, it's like over time, just like, the programming with the phone, if you hear it enough times, all of a sudden it becomes your new reality.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. And, maybe I will still say I'm a skeptic on stage hypnosis and how much it really works. But I do think that the power of suggestion and the power of repetition in prayer / meditation / suggestion via sleep, I think that works 100%. I think you can use it for good and evil to personally,
Yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah. It's, and then that's why, again, it goes back to, the individual learning to be able to access these states on their own and to be aware of those things that are going on, around them, is that we're educating ourselves and we're training our own minds. We're training our own spirits so we can be our own unique individual and also have the opportunity to attract and be involved with other individuals that also, the word that my wife and I use is conscious, not necessarily just talking about conscious as far as awake, but conscious in the understanding of um the human experience and what we're all about. And if we were able to come to those realizations for ourselves, then that's going to make it significantly more difficult for individuals who would, attempt to try to, manipulate and control the masses, because that's the biggest fear. That you could say, a lot of people say that the biggest fear of those powers that be is they would much prefer the masses to be asleep as opposed to the masses being, awake.
Exactly, because I mean, it's easier to manipulate. You can move herds with fear. I mean, that's what it's really all about. But I wanted to ask you something really quick because when I meditate, I like to use sound vibration, either
Mhm.
432 hertz, 528, 369. Nikola Tesla talks about if you want to understand the universe, things of terms of frequency and vibration. Is there a specific tone, vibrational frequency that a person should be using if you're doing hypnosis or meditation, or is it just more about what feels best to you?
And before you answer that, I do want to know, what should you eat to be at the best, meditation deal? Like, is it wheatgrass? Should you smoke a little bowl of weed? Should you take some magic mushrooms before you listen to all this? Because at the end of the day, we all want the hack to get it right.
The thing that I always tell people is that, there's no right or wrong. There's only what works for us and what doesn't work for us. And that's what especially when it comes to, using hypnosis or meditation, having access to everything that's out there now, as I tell people, experiment, see what works for you. Because there are a lot of people that prefer certain tones. They feel that resonates really well with them. And there's certain people prefer certain types of, music or sound effects or things like that. And, just see what works for you and what resonates with you. And you're going to know, you're going to respond to that. And you're going to go, oh yeah, I like this. I've noticed a difference. This particular hypnotist really resonates with me. This other hypnotist does not, resonate with me. And that's the interesting thing about putting stuff out there literally to the entire world on YouTube. You're going to hear from everybody. I can put out the exact same, the same video, and, one person's going to go, I love that. And somebody else is going to go, this sucked. Didn't like it. Didn't work for me. So just practice and experiment, see what resonates with you, and go with what works, and, stay away from what doesn't work for you.
Do you and your wife do anything to cleanse your energy, like when you're at your house? Like I know that there's some devices, so like electromagnetic fields that kind of cleanse energy around your house or kind of neutralizes things like that. Do you and your wife do anything like that to kind of keep your energy clean and balanced or anything like that?
In fact, I don't think I have it up here. It's probably down on my nightstand, but we've got these little pyramids that we keep on the nightstand that, you know, they say alleviates, electromagnetic frequencies and things like that that are, out there. And of course there's people that have different bracelets and things like that. So yeah, there's things that, we take into consideration as far as what you're interacting with in the physical world. And then of course the energetic world, the meditations and the things that we do, on a regular basis to continue to um, maintain the energy level that we're looking for within our house. And that's and I credit my wife to most of this, but one of the things that everybody says when they come into our home, because my wife will do her one-on-one sessions here, is that people, as soon as they walk into our home, they feel a different vibrational energy, and people always comment on that, about how they feel, the energy, within our house. So props to my wife, because she clearly is, she's doing something that's working in that department.
Man, I just want to know.
It's a rabbit hole, man. It's such a rabbit
I
hole.
love it. I want to keep asking questions.
And
No,
the thing is one of the things I wonder, look, when you go down the rabbit hole, and of course, fascinated by the idea of, parallel universes and alternate realities. Are there alternate realities where there are, I look at this in the terms of, religious debate, because one church will say they've got all the information and they're the right way. And then somebody else, another church is going to say they've got all the information and they're the right way. And then the atheist is going to say, no, it's not like that. And the new age guru is going to say, no, it's like this. Well, are there multiple realities where, this particular church, this is way, this particular ideology is, is this way?
Which is funny, because I think I have an answer to that. Okay. I don't know how true this is, but I could tell you this. It seems like the most legit answer in the books of history that's been recounted by multiple people.
But which book from which reality?
Exactly. But we're gonna go by the one. We're gonna go by the one that I feel it's
This reality.
Reality,
what are we on? Earth
so,
3B.
So there's an account not only in the Torah, but also in the Quran and in the Bible, where Jesus is talking to Moses and Isaiah. Now, if you're conspiracy theories like I am, I think that it is a tear in the time-space continuum. Okay, that moment was happening at the same time in all three different timelines, confirming that there's some sort of
That's quantum physics, right?
That's
there,
exactly
bro.
what I'm saying, right? And if you believe in the idea that Jesus met, because he went up into prayer, as he was as it is told in the Bible and in these other religious books, he went into prayer before he saw them and spoke to them, right? The disciples said, "Well, we saw him speak to Moses and Isaiah," right? Like multiple people saw this, and like, so there is a tear in the space-time continuum in that moment, and that moment happened all at the same time in three different timelines in three different times in history. So I personally believe, if you go down the rabbit hole as an enlightened man like Jesus was, you can tear the space-time continuum and you can time travel.
Well, there's an argument, a lot of people theorize that there is no linear time, that basically everything is all happening at the same time. It's like a video game. You're playing a video game, but you experience the video game in a linear timeline. But in reality, all of the information in the video game is all there, kind of happening, at the same time.
It's funny, because even at least in the Christian context, and this is how I've always put my life and all these theories that we come up with here through the Christian context. God says, well, your day, I've seen it all already.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a crazy concept, because even if you don't believe and you hear somebody say that, like a creator say, hey, you don't know what's going to happen, but I've already seen the end. So,
but that also kind of goes into the other thought and the other side of the rabbit hole of when you're talking about meditation and achieving or getting to the Akashic records, right? Because that's like another realm within the quantum field that people talk about, that everything, every answer, every truth, every response is available in that hallway, or in that palace.
Because it is, right? Like, you have to at some point, I think, you have to believe that it is.
Yeah, and it's like, is every version of reality, every possible outcome, all of that information, which is all there playing out at the same time, and is it like, however one believes and resonates is the reality that they're going to, wind up in.
and I think the reason we talk a lot about the powers that be and the people in control and the elites, and the reason they want to control the way we think is because they understand, like a lot of these people from past cultures, they understand that doesn't matter what you call your God, right? I think, and this is, I say this as a devout Christian who goes to church every Sunday and goes to small groups and all this other stuff, that there's a reality of when we start getting into a community and we do these group meditations and we do these things and we have this idea of like there is a higher power in which we can tap into, an energy that we can tap into, where I think hypnosis and meditation and all these other things, they're just tools in which we use to tap into. I do believe that that's what they're trying to subvert, because the interesting, when you look at the numbers in America, and it doesn't, this has nothing to do with Christianity, but everything to do with the state of how the powers that be are controlling people. In the 40s, before the greatest generation, was over 60% Christian, which means they believed in some sort of mass gathering of meditations of some kind. Right? The boomers were 47% Christian, which means only 47% of the American people believed in some sort of mass gathering and meditation. The Gen Xers, 20 something percent. Millennials, 2%. Alpha generation, Zennials, register at below 0.5%. So whatever the goal was with distracting people from tapping into the source of whatever that pineal gland is, or whatever that higher power is that we achieve through meditation and hypnosis, it's worked.
Well, it's also very interesting because, if you look at, those decreasing numbers of people that identify with, a religion or, or religious, are they, swearing off the concept of God and religion, or are they coming into another understanding of the nature of reality? And
that could be true too, but when you think about the detachment and the more secularism of that the world has become, I don't think people really know how to tap into the energy. Everybody talks about the vibe, but they don't know what a vibe is, right?
that's the thing that I found that people are starting to kind of discover now, though. That's, there are a lot of people that are no longer identifying with the concept of an organized religion, yet they are seeking something. They are looking to try to understand, what is this all about? And, why am I here? How am I interacting, with all of this? And a lot of people are now kind of turning to, um, some of the, like these ideas that we've talked about here, energy and the relationship to, physical reality, and what is it all about? Is there something deeper that we are here as a part of, that is not necessarily the idea of one supreme, being that says this is how it all is, and these are the things that you specifically have to do, or is it, the supreme being is actually the collective consciousness of all of us together, having our own unique experiences from our own perspectives, in physical reality, which is then in turn growing that, universal consciousness, that universal energy, if you will.
So I don't know if any of you, if you, Danny, or you, John, that if you've checked out the most recent Joe Rogan interview with Terrence Howard. Fascinating interview.
I've seen some clips. I've been wanting to watch that. I've some of those clips. It's just kind of blown me away, because I'm like, I knew Terrence Howard as an actor. He was in Iron Man, and then of course Empire. And I'm like,
Hustle and flow, bro. Don't forget hustle and flow.
Hustle
In
and
fact,
flow,
I
hustle and
was
flow.
playing Whoop That Trick for my wife last night.
Hell yeah.
Whoop that trick. Whoop that trick.
Terrence Howard has blown my mind. He's blown millions of people of minds all over the world. A lot of these clips are going viral. And if his theories are right, he has 97 patents on all his new theories. And everything that he's saying, at least it resonates with me, because one of the things that he points out is like, there's no straight lines in nature. And I'm like, holy shit, he's right. Look at a tree, look at a leaf, look at the grass. There's no straight lines. Straight lines was man-made. It's man-made created. And a lot of the things that he's talking about, the periodic table too, that it was wrong from the beginning. It should have been done in a spiral and not in a flat plane because of Newtonian physics, everything being done in a straight line in a flat plane. And the world and the galaxy doesn't work on a flat plane like that, or 2D dimensional. So the way that he breaks everything down, I mean, I'm still trying to understand it, but it is wild. And if this proves to be true, this can actually change everything that we know.
I've got to jump in and watch that, because it's like, man, it's like, have I quantum leapt now into this alternate reality where this whole other side of Terrence Howard that I've had
brilliant,
no relationship or understanding of previously. So yeah, I was watching a clip of that last night, hence playing, telling my wife Terrence Howard, and then playing Whoop That Trick, and what's the other one? It's and it's hard out here for a pimp, and it's trying to get the money for the rent. Yeah,
because it is hard out here for a pimp if you can go with a conventional reality, but if you go with the new reality that everything.
But the thing is that the new reality makes sense, dude. Like whatever.
Is it a new? Okay, let's be honest. Okay, let's be honest, Jose. Is it a new reality, or is it a reboot of an old reality?
You guys debate this for a second. I'm going to run to I got to hit the head really quick. I should have done this before we get on to the talk. I'll be right back.
Go for it. I think you're 100% right, because if what he's pointing out is 100% true, right? Then that explains all the UAP phenomena. That explains how these vehicles are moving in air straight up across, right? It explains so much on how you can do more space exploration with that type of technology, because then you're using vibration, sounds, and magnetism to fucking propulse your engines, or electricity and water. You don't need to use any of the other stuff anymore. Like, the stuff that he breaks down in that interview is mind-blowing, bro.
Now let me ask you this, because I'm always a skeptic, and I love Terrence Howard. I love
you guys keeping me engaged with the long-form content here, man. I was losing track of time. I'm like, man.
Well, we're hypnotizing you, man. We're hypnotizing you. No, so okay, here's the thing, right? With all the discoveries and all the theories that Terrence Howard has. Now, this is my problem when I see somebody like him bring up about a lot of these things.
Well, okay.
And this is not, it has nothing to do with him being an artist. I think him being an artist gives him a unique perspective. But the fact that there's a lot of UAP things and aliens being leaked, and there's a lot of these things, all of a sudden it's like, hey, let's get somebody that's kind of weird out there, and let's just have him be like an industry plant. Let's just see what happens when we do this. And I'm all like, skeptical hippo eyes. You know what I'm saying?
You bring up a good point there, because I have this discussion quite a bit with my wife, because look, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if you would have told me, if you would have told anybody that we're having the discussions, the media is reporting about UAPs and UFOs and all of this other stuff, I would have never, we would never believed it, right?
It would have only been for midnight content for Coast to Coast AM.
Coast to Coast, yeah.
It would have been an Art Bell conversation only.
Dude, I used to listen when I was doing road gigs. I would, driving through the middle of the night, like literally in the middle of nowhere, somewhere through Nevada, or Montana or Oregon, and listening to, Art Bell and George Norrie, man, and I would get so freaking creeped out listening to that stuff.
Great.
But then that's the thing. It's like, okay, well, has that stuff always been there? But then there's a big debate in that whole space now about what is real and what is not, and who, do the people that have a greater understanding of what's really going on, are they throwing out a bunch of, are there fear mongering, is that happening going on?
And that's my thing, right? Like, I can't trust it, not because I don't want to trust it. It's like, I can't, because there's just too much information.
And everybody's got a different perspective, and you've got Stephen Greer, who says, look, these are entities or interdimensional beings, extraterrestrial beings that are actually here to help us, versus, the fear mongering that you have on the news. Because look, the reality of it is, if the powers that be come out and say, guess what, aliens are real and we need to be very afraid of them, and you need to be afraid, therefore you need to give more tax money to the government and allow the government to have more control so we can take care of you and we can protect you.
Project Bluebeam.
Yeah.
Project Bluebeam, man.
Telling you, just we imported all the Nazis to start our space program. Now we're using Nazi tactics to scare people into giving the government more power. At the end of the day, that's all that it really is.
And then there's the argument that says, okay, well, if all of these are benevolent, entities, whether they're interdimensional, whether they're extraterrestrial, if they were here and were able to educate, the human race with a higher understanding of consciousness and a greater ability of our minds, to be able to truly get along and truly work together to have a unity consciousness and thrive and succeed. Well, who's feels threatened the most by that? The powers that be, because now they're not going to be able to control the masses.
Here's my thing. It's always been an interdimensional thing, right? And the reason I can prove this by language alone, and it has nothing to do with religion, right? The religion calls them demons, but the tech world calls them daemons, which is the word demons just pronounced differently, right? It's all the same thing. In every religious text around the world, they all talk about these entities that live among us that we can't see, right? Some call them the Fae phenomenon. We had a guy on here that calls it the Fae phenomenon. We had a guy that talks about, different cryptids and stuff like that. The chupacabras, the fairies, the angels, the Nephilim, they've all existed and they've all been here. And every culture calls it something slightly different, but it's always been here. And it's like, there's our reality, this flesh and blood reality that we understand, that we conceptualize. But there's this other reality that religious text calls demons and angels, and others call fae and fairies and druids or whatever. But it's all the same thing. It's all been this principalities of power that influences humanity in one way or the other, and it's something that I believe exists in this world. And I believe that through, certain aspects, we can either speak to them or not. And I think if you take certain drugs, you can be controlled by them because they look for open windows.
Yeah.
In my opinion. In my opinion, these are things that I believe happen. And I don't know what it is. You're the hypnosis. You know more about the human consciousness than I do.
Well, you touch on, if you take certain drugs and things like that, then you're more, are you more susceptible, which there is an argument to be made for one having their shit together if they're going to do things, like ayahuasca and things like that, that, you approach that from a kind of an elevated conscious, perspective that, hey, I'm not just doing something here to go to a rave and, and party and whatever, but you're using that in conjunction with, your own, the existing knowledge of how to operate your mind and your body and your spirit, those two things in conjunction. But you're talking about things that have always been here. I don't know who was talking to the other day, but the analogy that I use, it's like, if there's a group of lobsters on the ocean floor, they have no idea that there's a thing like a podcast, or there's YouTube, or there's an internet, or this whole other world, above, the surface of the water. It's like one lobster gets caught up in a trap and goes up on a boat, and then for whatever reason, the boat's like, we don't want this one, throws him back in the water. And then he's on the ocean floor going, I'm telling you, man, this is what happened. This is what's going on. There was this thing, I have no idea. There was
you're crazy.
Like us, and there was all this stuff going on.
Can you go home? You're drunk.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's real. I'm telling you, I saw it to put something on my butt. Okay.
There's civilizations in the Amazon that have not had, any contact with, the outside world. You know, you see the ones where sometimes there's video footage of like a drone being flown over and they're all looking up and they're shooting arrows and things like that, you know, at the drones. You know, pick a species of animal, you know, anywhere in the world, and they have no idea. And what makes us any different from any of them, that we have no idea that there's something else out there beyond us?
Wow.
So, John, I want to close out the show by asking you a series of lightning round questions. All you got to do is score these from 1 through 10 on how hardcore do you believe in it or not. All right. So, and these are all going to be pretty random. All right. So,
Okay.
we're going to start with the first one. First one's going to be Bigfoot.
You know, hardcore. It would be on the lower end of that.
Give it a number, 1 to 10. 1 being low,
say,
10 being 10.
I'm going to say 3 on that, but you know, I'm open to whatever that may be. If you ever get a chance, watch. I think it's called Missing 411. The guy did a few documentaries.
Mr. Ballin, yeah, I know who
Yeah,
you're talking about.
yeah, the people that went missing in the national parks. You know, that is creepy and mind blowing. So, you know, I guess the idea that there's some hairy creature that just lives like in the woods, like a gorilla or a monkey or something, you know, not that, but that there is something there. So I guess I would say the traditional concept of Bigfoot, I'm definitely lower on that scale end.
JFK, inside job or not?
You know, I'm going to probably have to go more on the upper end of that. I'm going to have to go 8-ish, since there's been a lot more that's come out that people have talked about that.
Nice.
I got
nice.
I got to go to the book depository. That was pretty cool. It's a little,
I've been there before.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
I live in DFW, you know, and it's like you could see. I was at a holiday, you know, parade downtown, right where the X is at, and you can see the X where he got shot, and you can see the grassy knoll, and you're like, and you know, I shoot guns, you know, recreationally every now and then. I'm like, I can make that shot. It's definitely an inside job.
I like you had to qualify that recreationally as opposed to some other reason.
Got to make it clear. Got to make
it clear. You know, I go to the gun range. You know.
What about the Anunnaki? Do you believe in the Watchers?
Yeah, I'm gonna give that a 9.
I give that a 10. Yes, Jose. I never answered that one, so yes, I believe in that.
All right, cool. All right, where do you stand on demonic possession?
We're speaking in numbers now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on a 1 on that.
Interesting.
Right.
But you know, not that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go. But again, it's hard to just put a number on something because there's all these, you know. But yeah, not in the traditional sense of. I guess I would put a 1 on it in the traditional sense of like The Exorcist. You know, that there's, and I use it like that. There's this devil. You know, there's a god, and then there's a devil, and the devil possesses. You know, you want to get into other things, then I could score that higher.
All right. Do you believe that Kevin Hart is an industry plant?
I'm gonna go 0 on that one because I have not. There's not enough that I've read or seen anything about that, and you know.
You don't believe Cat Williams? What?
I don't know enough about any. You know, I've seen that stuff, and I'm like, you know what? It doesn't affect my day-to-day life. So you know, what's the
Now I noticed that you have the all-seeing eye on your hat there.
Yeah.
First, this is a 2-part question. First part, do you believe in the Illuminati and secret societies? And second part of that question, are you Illuminati confirmed?
I am not Illuminati. I will tell you an interesting story though. My wife, before we got married, she gets this book in the mail. It was like really weird. She goes, I opened up and it was this beautifully bound book, and it had all the stuff in it. And like there was like an invitation for her to join the Illuminati. It was very strange. She was like, it freaked her out. This was quite a long time ago. She goes, it freaked me out. And she goes, I threw the book out. And then, I don't know, I got a message from somebody on Facebook once who asked me to join the Illuminati. And I'm like, they've gone from these really nice bound books with this information messaging you to a DM. Yeah.
I got one on Instagram last year.
I got like 3 of them in the last year. It's great.
You know, it's so, I mean, yeah, I do believe that there's something in that department. You know, defining it in the way that maybe a lot of people do. Yeah, I don't know.
Danny, you got the last one.
This is a good one. Is I like this one. This is one of my favorite ones on the internet. Is Joe Biden a body double?
I'm going to say no to that. I'm going to give that a 0, though I do know people who would give that a 12 on a scale of 1 to 10. There's like a guy, Arthur somebody or other. There's like that's like somebody named Arthur. That's the body double.
It's like the real Joe Biden's been dead for like 6 years. This guy is like a body double.
People on the internet are wild, bro.
I know.
John, thanks
the elevation of the plastic surgery on him. So, but yeah, thank you guys.
Question, and this is the most serious question: who won the beef, Kendrick Lamar or Drake?
Dude, I have no idea. I don't even know what was going on there. I saw some people talking about that or whatever, and I go, "What is this?" I have no idea. I am so out of. I could ask my son. That's what I just go to my 17-year-old and go, "Okay, what's this about?"
You know what's funny about that situation? That so Tom Hanks, the actor, he put up I think something on Instagram asking him like, "What's the?" He asked his son because his son apparently is a rapper, and he asked his son, "What's going on with this whole Kendrick Lamar and Drake's feud?" And then his son answered him like this long ass text explaining what was going on, and then Tom Hanks is like, "Damn, they did Drake like that." So good. Oh man, John, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show tonight, man. We really appreciate it. We gotta have you back on because I don't think we
absolutely, man.
Surface on this topic, so we definitely gotta have you back. Make sure you guys follow John on socials on Instagram at John Moyer. Check out the website MoyerMindset.com and check out his YouTube channel as well. So I'll have all the links in the description. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media: YouTube, Rumble, at Cultura Truth Project, Gonzalez Media TV on Facebook and on Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on all major platforms and join us and subscribe on Spreaker for the supporters only club, $3 a month. The link is in the description.
$3 pesitos, mi gente.
$3 pesitos. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys, and we'll check you guys out in the next episode. Take care.